Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Yesterday, we told you that Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu will talk on the phone. Tonight, we can tell you that they did. But Netanyahu apparently did not tell Biden what he plans to do next. Israel is said to be shutting the Americans out of their war plans while also depending on the same Americans for military, monetary and political support. On the other side, the new Hamas chief is said to be planning suicide attacks and Iran reported tremors. Was it an earthquake or a nuclear test? We'll examine. In the middle of all of this, the US is said to be meddling in Lebanese politics to install their man as the next president of Lebanon. We'll bring you up to speed with all of it. In India, we are bidding farewell to a legend. Ratan Tata is no more. We'll talk about his legacy and what he did for his country and his company. Prime Minister Modi is walking the talk on his Act East policy. He is in Laos. We'll tell you why this is a significant visit. In the US, why there's a political storm over Hurricane Milton. In Pakistan, Pashtun protests, politics and the crackdown that won't stop. The latest Nobel controversy is big tech hacking the awards. How India is arming itself against China with new drones and submarines, and why French President Macron is fighting to keep the Netflix show Emily in Paris. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Russia says North Korean soldiers are not fighting for them in Ukraine, rejecting South Korea's claim as fake. Just days ago, Ukrainian media reported that North Korean troops were killed near Donetsk. In recent years, nuclear-armed Pyongyang has bolstered its military ties with Moscow. The leaders of Egypt, Eritrea and Somalia meet in Asmara. The three-way summit comes amid rising tensions in the Horn of Africa. In January, Ethiopia signed a controversial deal with Somaliland, which is a breakaway region of Somalia. The maritime agreement has soured Ethiopia's ties with Somalia as well as Egypt. Myanmar's junta arrests a prominent democracy activist. He was taken into custody during a nighttime raid in Yangon. The military ousted Aung San Suu Kyi's government in 2021. Since then, more than 27,000 people have been arrested by the junta. Han Kang wins the Nobel Prize in Literature. She is the first South Korean to receive this award. Han is best known for her novel The Vegetarian. It won the Man Booker Prize in 2016. The Nobel honor comes with a diploma, a gold medal and $1 million cash prize. And Rafael Nadal announces his retirement from tennis. His last tournament will be the Davis Cup Finals in November. Nadal won 22 Grand Slam titles and an Olympic singles gold during his 22-decade-long career. He is considered to be one of the greatest tennis players.
Our attack will be deadly, precise, and above all, surprising.
Florida, the western coast of Florida.
An Israeli strike on Iran. It seems inevitable now. Israel's defense minister has issued fresh threats. He says Israel is planning a lethal attack, one that will surprise Tehran.
Whoever attacks us will be hurt and will pay a price. Our attack will be deadly, precise, and above all, surprising. They will not understand what happened and how it happened. They will see the results.
Israel's Security Cabinet was expected to meet today to take the final call, to vote on the retaliation plan, to review their strike options, weigh all possibilities, and finally pick one option. So it's only a matter of time. Israel has every intention to go ahead with this operation, and by the looks of it, they want to do it alone, keeping the Americans out of the loop. That is what Netanyahu is doing. For days, the US has been asking Israel about its retaliation plan and how it will attack Iran. The US wanted to shape Israel's response. It has been making suggestions and hoping to avoid surprises. It has specifically asked Israel to not target Iran's energy and nuclear facilities. But these appeals seem to have fallen on deaf ears. Israel has been dragging its feet. It refuses to share its plans, and that's frustrating the Americans. Yesterday, Joe Biden spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu. The call lasted about 30 minutes. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris joined it too. Now, as you're aware, Biden and Netanyahu are not very friendly. They haven't spoken to each other since August. There's a fair bit of tension between the two, so it's no surprise that the White House is being cagey about sharing the details of yesterday's conversation. This is all they said.
Said about 30 minutes. It was 30 minutes long. It was direct. It was productive. The U.S. and the Israeli government have had discussion since last week, certainly since after the Iran attack. And so those discussions continued with the president and the prime minister.
It's a classic non-statement. It just goes to show how America's ties with Israel are deteriorating and how Biden's influence in the region is fading. Israel depends on the U.S. for security, but it refuses to share its military plans with them, even when American lives are at risk. So Washington is not taking chances. They're evacuating Americans in Lebanon.
As long as the Beirut airport remains open, we will continue to make more airplane seats available daily. To date, the number of seats available continues to exceed demand. The U.S. Embassy in Beirut remains open and can help Americans who need emergency passports or other documentation. We urge Americans to take advantage of these options.
The U.S. wants Americans in Lebanon to leave. It has also warned Israel to not strike the airport in Beirut and the roads leading up to it. Here is what the U.S. fears. If Israel hits back at Iran, there will be a counterstrike from Tehran, and in such a scenario, Americans in Lebanon will be sitting ducks caught in the crossfire. In fact, Israel is already intensifying its strikes in Lebanon. Even United Nations peacekeepers are not safe. Their headquarters in South Lebanon have been hit repeatedly. 2 peacekeepers are injured. They were hit by Israeli tank fire. Meanwhile, Beirut is coming under incessant attacks. In response, Hezbollah is firing more rockets towards Israel. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israel struck a school shelter today. It killed 28 Palestinians. So expect a response from Hamas too, and a dangerous one, because Yahya Sinwar is making moves. That's the new Hamas chief, also the mastermind of the October 7th attacks. Sinwar has been underground for a while, but reports say that he has issued a fresh directive. He wants to use suicide bombers against Israel. Remember, 2 decades ago, Hamas used to be infamous for this. They carried out multiple suicide attacks in Israel, but then the practice was discontinued because Hamas leaders were worried that they would become political pariahs, so they stopped the suicide bombings. But Yahya Sinwar wants to go back to the old ways. He wants to resume suicide attacks, and while that is worrying, it is not surprising because Yahya Sinwar is a known hardliner. He believes that militancy is the only way to achieve the political goals of Hamas. And now he's taking a more extreme position. As Israel sets its sights on the Iranian regime, Iran's proxies are working on their next moves. Have you heard the saying, when the cat is away, the mice will play? It means that when the person in charge is out, underlings get up to mischief. It seems this idiom is playing out in Lebanon. The cat is Hezbollah, and instead of being away, it's in utter disarray. Their longtime chief, Hassan Nasrallah, is dead. The rest of their top leadership keeps getting assassinated, and they're fighting off a ground invasion by Israel. So the cat is definitely preoccupied. In the meantime, a foreign mouse seems to have hatched a plot to determine Lebanon's next president.
We are having conversations with a number of different players inside Lebanon, and not only are we having conversations with them, our allies and partners from inside the region and from outside the region are having those conversations, and oftentimes we have sort of intermediaries to talk to individuals inside Lebanon. Those are ongoing. I don't think it's productive for me to read them out publicly.
The U.S. wants Lebanon's next president to be a friendly face, someone they can work with, and they believe now is the time to strike, while Hezbollah is too weak to interfere. Now, this does not mean that Lebanon will hold presidential elections. It doesn't work like that. You see, Lebanon's president is not elected. They are selected by parliament. But the Lebanese parliament has not been able to choose a president for the last 2 years. Yes, 2 years. Lebanon's last president stepped down in October 2022, and there's been a power vacuum ever since. But now the U.S. is encouraging them to try again, and things seem to be in motion.
Calling on the partners in the homeland to take the path of reconciliation and mutual understanding under the umbrella of one homeland, the Constitution and the comprehensive institutions, and to assume our joint national responsibilities by electing a consensual president for the Republic who reassures everyone and dispels their various concerns.
That was Lebanon's caretaker prime minister. Yes, caretaker. The country doesn't have a full-time president or prime minister at the moment. That's how bad the deadlock is. But the U.S. is hoping to break that and hoping that their man gets the job. The U.S. is reportedly backing this man, Joseph Aoun. He is a general in the Lebanese army. The U.S. believes that Lebanon's army has a big role to play in the future. Whenever Israel and Hezbollah agree to a ceasefire, after that the Lebanese army will have to take control, keep a watch on the border and replace Hezbollah fighters. That is why the Americans are backing an army general as the next president. But so far, their man was nowhere in the lead. Lebanon's parliament has had multiple rounds of voting, and they haven't been able to reach a consensus for 2 years. The main reason was Hezbollah. You see, Hezbollah is not just a militant group, it's also a political party. They have their own MPs who all backed another candidate. This man, Suleiman Frangieh, Hezbollah considers him an ally, so they refused to let any other candidate become president. Hezbollah did not have enough seats to ensure his victory, but they had enough to veto any other candidate. And that is why Lebanon has been rudderless for 2 years. But now things have changed. Hezbollah is busy fighting Israel. Hassan Nasrallah is dead. Lebanon knows it needs a real government to deal with the ongoing crisis. So the parliament may finally come together to get this done. But apparently, Hezbollah is not happy about this. They don't want a president selected without their approval. Listen to the acting chief of the group.
We support the political efforts that Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabi Berri is undertaking towards a ceasefire. In any case, after the ceasefire is established and diplomacy is able to achieve it, all other details will be discussed and decisions will be taken collaboratively.
He said Hezbollah wants to be a part of political decisions in Lebanon, which means they may not agree to a U.S.-backed president. Will the U.S. succeed in installing their candidate? Will the people of Lebanon accept it? And will Hezbollah retaliate? We'll find out in the days ahead. Iran has a lot on its plate right now. Israel is preparing to attack the country. Its proxies are under fire. There are fears of a wider war. So Tehran is dealing with a lot. And amid all of this, an earthquake struck the country last week on October 5th. The epicenter was close to Semnan, a city in northern Iran. It wasn't a very big earthquake. The magnitude was around 4.5 on the Richter scale, so relatively minor, but there were some strong tremors. In fact, it was felt as far as Tehran. So a minor earthquake, some tremors, no damage at all. At any other point in time, no one would care about something like this. But this one is different. And that's because of the timing. It's suspicious. Iran struck Israel last week. Israel vowed to hit back, and suddenly a mysterious earthquake occurs. Was it just another natural phenomenon, or was it the result of some human activity? The internet has made up its mind. They're calling it a nuclear test. Iran's first underground nuclear test that may have led to the tremors. But does this claim hold water? Can nuclear tests cause earthquakes? Did Iran really test its nuclear capability? And where does their nuclear program stand at the moment? Let's look at these one by one. First, do nuclear tests cause tremors? The answer is yes, they do. Any underground nuclear detonation can cause seismic activity similar to an earthquake, but not quite the same. For example, the depth of the tremor. This earthquake was shallow, around 10 kilometers deep. Usually, nuclear sites are located further underground. Then there's the detonation. It often causes an explosion on the surface. There was none in Iran, not that we know of. And no explosion is a very rare thing in a nuclear test. Plus, look at the magnitude. It does not indicate a nuclear explosion. Also, Iran is very prone to earthquakes. So this could be just another one. Having said all of this, there is still one point that raises doubts, and that is the location of this quake. In 2019, a Washington-based think tank released a report. It said that Iran was building underground testing sites, and one likely location was Semnan, very close to the main city. So Iran is said to be building a testing site here. This report came out in 2019. Now, 5 years later, West Asia is on the edge. Iran has to prove its might, and on cue, an earthquake occurs at the very same place. So a lot of people joined the dots and said this must be a nuclear test. Of course, it's hard to prove. There isn't enough evidence. But does Iran have the capability to launch a test like this, and that too so quickly? How advanced is their nuclear program? They started working on it way back in the 1950s, and they had someone helping them, the United States. That's right, Iran's now arch rival was once a close friend that got their nuclear program up and running. All was well until 1979, but then the Iranian Revolution happened. America's friend, the Shah of Iran, was toppled, and Ayatollah Khomeini took over. Initially, he was opposed to nuclear power, so their program was paused, but it resumed in the 1980s. And this time, Iran got help from countries like Russia. In 2002, it was found that Tehran had secret nuclear facilities. It was pursuing weapons-grade uranium. So until 2015, Iran was sanctioned heavily for its uranium enrichment and for its lack of transparency. But then in 2015, a deal was signed, the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, better known as the Iranian Nuclear Deal. Iran signed it with the US, the UK, France, China, Russia, and Germany. Tehran promised to limit its nuclear program. In exchange, the others agreed to lift sanctions. And it worked fine until 2018. But then Donald Trump pulled the plug. He exited the pact, the nuclear deal fell apart. Iran started breaching its commitments and building its nuclear capacity. As of today, it has a few known nuclear sites. This is where they're located. Look at the map. It also has some secret facilities and enrichment capability to build warheads. Experts estimate that Iran can build a bomb in a week. So the big question is, have they done it already? Has Iran built a nuclear bomb? Honestly, we have no way to verify, just like we have no way to know for sure if the tremor was an earthquake or a nuclear test. Tehran will not come clean, but we do know that it does want a nuclear deterrent. And if it has the capability, this would be the best time to build it. What is legacy? Is it your place on a Forbes list? Is it your name on a billboard? Or maybe government honors or awards? Sure, all of it counts, but legacy is a lot more than just that. It's how people remember you after you're gone, how they talk about you, how they narrate stories about you. And that is why Ratan Tata stood out. I'm sure you've read about what happened. Mr. Tata had been hospitalized for a medical checkup this week, and then last night the news came in, Ratan Tata had passed away at the age of 86. What happened next rarely happens. The whole country came together. Politicians, athletes, actors, business leaders, all of them mourned Ratan Tata together. If you look at their messages, you will notice something. A few common words used to describe him: visionary, philanthropist, compassionate, and nationalist. It's a lot of heavy adjectives for one man, but Ratan Tata carried them with ease. Today, his last rites were held in Mumbai. The Maharashtra government had declared a day of mourning. They also ordered a state funeral for him. Just look at how many people turned up to pay their respects. That's the legacy I was talking about. Celebrities, politicians, ordinary citizens, all of them lined up for a final goodbye. It's a testament to his career, to what he did for his company and his country. So tonight we're looking at the life of India's most respected business leader, starting with his last name. Every child in India knows about Tata. It's a business conglomerate involved in just about everything: vehicles, food, hotels, weapons, software, you name it, Tata makes it. The group has 30 different companies, and their principal promoter is an entity called Tata Sons. Whoever leads Tata Sons is the top boss. That's who Ratan Tata was. But his journey there was interesting. Ratan Tata was born in 1937. By then, the company was a giant in Indian business. When he was 10 years old, his parents separated. After that, young Ratan lived with his grandmother. In 1962, he graduated from America's Cornell University. His subject was architecture. Apparently, Mr. Tata was taken in by the American West Coast. He wanted to settle down in Los Angeles. But fate had other plans. His grandmother convinced Ratan Tata to return to India. Not like he walked straight into the boardroom, though. He had to prove himself first. Back then, another legendary businessman was running the company. J.R.D. Tata, a distant relative of Ratan Tata. Apparently, there was hostility. J.R.D. was not initially fond of his to-be successor. He was posted on the shop floor of Tata Steel and shuttled between departments. Things improved as J.R.D. Tata became older. When he retired in 1991, Ratan Tata took over as chairperson. And what a time it was. India was starting to open up its economy. Free market policies were being rolled out, so Ratan Tata had his work cut out. He inherited a solid group of companies, but they lacked a common vision. In 1991, Tata was like a federation of different companies. Ratan Tata went about fixing that. During this time, he also announced a major goal: a homegrown car. He set up a new engineering team to design it. He was personally involved in creating the assembly line. Thus, in 1998, the Indica was born. His car project also revealed his compassionate side. I'll narrate a story for you. Ratan Tata visited the car factory one day. He saw that workers had to bend twice to assemble a part, and that meant bending some 600 times per day. Do you know what he did? He ordered a robot to be brought in. He said his workers cannot be doing such back-breaking work. That was Ratan Tata, the boss, always caring for his workers. By the turn of the 21st century, Ratan Tata had consolidated different Tata companies, so he eyed his next target, a foreign footprint. In the year 2000, he led the acquisition of Tetley Tea. In 2007, he bought steelmaker Chorus. And in 2008, he made his biggest splash. Tata Group bought Jaguar and Land Rover from Ford. Again, there's a story behind it. Tata's Indica was not a success at first, so Ratan Tata considered selling the auto business. Ford was keen on buying it, so Ratan Tata and his team flew out to Detroit. But the meeting went really bad. Apparently, the Ford CEO humiliated Ratan Tata. He said to him, "You don't know anything about it, so why did you start the passenger car division?" The deal never went through, but it lit a fire in Ratan Tata. He got his redemption years later. In 2008, the Great Recession had hurt Ford's business. They could not hold on to Jaguar and Land Rover. Enter Ratan Tata. He bought them off Ford for $2.3 billion. Basically, he bailed out the company that humiliated him. Of course, not all of this was seen positively. Some people questioned this acquisition spree. You see, Tata was taking loans to buy loss-making foreign companies. A lot of experts wondered why, but Ratan Tata proved them all wrong. He retired as chairman in 2012, and by then, 2/3 of Tata's revenue came from abroad. It was truly a multinational company. And that's his business legacy. He took Tata to the world, all the while keeping his feet on Indian soil. He tried to understand what the Indian consumer wanted. And that is why he made the Nano. It was supposed to be the cheapest passenger vehicle in the world, just about 1 lakh rupees for the base model. Again, his assumption was right. Indians did want a car of their own, but perhaps a bigger model would have worked better. It's business at the end of the day. You win some, you lose some. And Ratan Tata won a lot more than he lost. But outside business, he only won. Ratan Tata became synonymous with philanthropy. He wasn't one for flashy cars or palatial houses. In fact, his Mumbai house did not even have guards. And he did not have to learn philanthropy. It's how he was brought up. The Tatas have always emphasized on giving back to the community. Listen to what their founder, Jamsetji Tata, said. The community is not just another stakeholder in business, but is in fact the very purpose of its existence. Ratan Tata lived by these words. You see, 66% of Tata Sons' equity was held by Tata Trusts. All that dividend money went straight to the trust, to charity. Under Ratan Tata's leadership, 10 cancer centers were set up in India, thousands of students got scholarships, and many universities received grants. When crisis struck, Ratan Tata was first to help. During the pandemic, Tata Trust donated $270 million to the relief effort, a huge sum for a single trust. When the 26/11 Mumbai attacks happened, Ratan Tata was personally affected. His Taj Hotel was among the targeted sites. Many of his employees and guests were killed. Ratan Tata paid lifelong salaries to the families of the slain staff, even built a memorial for them. A few years ago, he made a quiet trip to Pune. No cameras, no announcement, no fanfare. Do you know why? To meet a former employee who was ill. Imagine that, an 83-year-old man, one of the richest people with the most famous surname in India, driving down to see a former employee. It tells you a lot about who this man was, what he prioritized in life, how he treated his employees, and how he saw the world. You won't find Ratan Tata in the billionaires list, but walk around the streets of India, ask about a man named Ratan Tata, the replies will tell you his real wealth, respect and adoration. Let's turn to diplomacy now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Laos today. It's a country that we rarely cover on the show. So first, some background. Laos is located in Southeast Asia. The population is around 7.5 million. It is surrounded by 5 countries: China, Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand and Cambodia. And why is the Prime Minister of India there? For the India-ASEAN Summit. You see, Laos is a member of the ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Sort of like the European Union of Southeast Asia. It has 10 members in all. India is not one of them. Remember, this is the India-ASEAN Summit. And this year, Laos is president of ASEAN. So the meetings are happening in that country. Prime Minister Modi landed around noon today. He was first treated to a familiar experience, a Laos version of the Ramayana. Take a look at this first. Don't be confused, the Ramayana is quite popular in Southeast Asia. Many centuries ago, Indians traveled there for trade. They took the Ramayana with them, and when they settled there, the story spread. Countries like Cambodia and Thailand also have their own versions of the Ramayana. But let's come back to diplomacy for the moment. The Prime Minister of India met the ASEAN heads of state today. He talked about trade and business. He also sent a subtle message to China. He said India and ASEAN states are peace-loving nations, and that they respect each other's sovereignty.
हम शांति प्रिय देश हैं, एक दूसरे की राष्ट्रीय अखंडता और संप्रभुता का सम्मान करते हैं और अपने युवाओं के उज्जवल भविष्य के प्रति हम कमिटेड हैं। मेरा मानना है कि 21वीं सदी एशियन सेंचुरी भारत और आसियान देशों की सेंचुरी है।
The joint statement also opposes China. It doesn't name Beijing, but the intent is pretty clear. Let me quote. We reaffirm the importance of maintaining and promoting peace, stability and maritime safety in accordance with universally recognized principles of international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS. Now, to give you some context, UNCLOS is the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. It's an international agreement that was signed in 1982, and it is the basis of all maritime claims. And how is China involved? Well, China claims most of the South China Sea. They have disputes with some of the ASEAN members like the Philippines and Vietnam. In 2016, an international court rejected China's claims. And that verdict was based on UNCLOS. So by citing this law, India is basically backing ASEAN's position. It is opposing China's maritime claims. And this is recent. When the verdict came out in 2016, India merely noted the decision. But now it is openly supporting it. Basically, India is picking a side, and there are many reasons for this shift. One, because India faces the same challenge as these countries, both in the high seas and the Himalayas. The same problem of Chinese expansionism. And two, because ASEAN has a lot to offer. There are 10 countries in ASEAN. One of them is Myanmar. It borders India. Trade between the two sides is nearly $130 billion. It has doubled in the last decade. Even foreign investment numbers are quite impressive. ASEAN has pumped more than $500 billion into India. That's in the last 2 decades alone. For ASEAN, India is a good friend to have, a big source of tourism, a major player in the global south, and a compelling military power. In fact, military exchanges are the new frontier in this relationship. Last year, India and ASEAN held their first ever joint military drill. This year, India shipped its BrahMos missile to the Philippines. The hope is to sell fighter jets as well. And this is all part of the Act East policy, a plan to tap into the potential of Southeast Asia. We saw an example of that last month too, when Prime Minister Modi traveled to Brunei. It's a sultanate in Southeast Asia, also a member of ASEAN. No Indian Prime Minister had ever visited this country. After Brunei, he also traveled to Singapore, again an ASEAN member. It tells you how the Prime Minister is focusing on this region, perhaps even beyond it. You see, Southeast Asia can be India's gateway to other places, like the Pacific or the Far East. In fact, that too is on the agenda. Prime Minister Modi will attend the East Asia Summit tomorrow. It's basically ASEAN plus 8 states, including India, Japan, South Korea, the US, Russia, and China. Today, he met some of those leaders, like Japan's new Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba. and New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon. Interestingly, US President Joe Biden is not attending. It's the second time that he is skipping this summit. Nonetheless, it promises to be an important one, especially because of the timing. China is stepping up its aggression in the region. They're clashing frequently with Filipino warships, so ASEAN states are looking for reliable partners, countries that will stand by them. As things stand, India fits the bill. Now let's talk about Hurricane Milton. It's wreaking havoc in Florida. The U.S. state is flooded, thousands are stranded, more than 3 million people have no power. The situation is bad enough on the ground, but on the internet, it has ignited another storm. Conspiracy theorists believe that the hurricane is engineered, that it was created by the U.S. government. Even top U.S. Republicans have echoed these claims. And what is the government saying? Well, the White House is calling it ridiculous. Our next report tells you about this political storm.
It's being called the biggest storm of the century. Hurricane Milton made its landfall in Florida last evening. The Category 3 storm weakened as it cut through the state. At Category 1 right now, it's still wreaking havoc as it moves towards the Atlantic. 4 people have been killed. 3 million are out of power. There have been deadly tornadoes. This is a 1-in-1,000-year event. Roads are flooded, people are stranded, and the state is waking up to massive destruction.
I don't know what to say. It's a lot. Born and raised here, never seen nothing like this.
So Hurricane Milton is battering Florida. America can agree on that. But if there's one thing the country can't agree on, it's the origin of the hurricane. Common sense would suggest this is freak weather, a powerful hurricane fueled by climate change. But some Americans believe otherwise. They think this is engineered. So let's dive into the swirling eye of this conspiracy. According to some conspiracy theorists, the existence of Hurricane Milton isn't an accident. It's not the result of warm ocean waters or shifting wind patterns. Instead, it's a carefully orchestrated operation by the United States government. They created this dangerous hurricane. Such theories were shared on both X and TikTok. Some were viewed 1 million times. Even Republicans jumped into this. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene suggested that the Biden government controlled the weather. And what does the White House have to say? Well, it's rubbished the claims.
Over the last few weeks, there's been a reckless and irresponsible and relentless promotion of disinformation and outright lies about what's going on. It's undermining confidence in the people in Florida, and it's harmful to those who most need the help. Quite frankly, these lies are un-American.
Now, there's no technology yet that can create or control hurricanes. But when has that stopped the disinformation campaign? They point to satellite images and strange cloud formations as undeniable proof of weather tampering. The reasoning for this is as varied as absurd. Some say the government did it to delay the elections. Others say it's a part of a massive experiment. At least no one's mentioned aliens yet. Now, conspiracy theories linked to natural disasters are not new. People often feel powerless in the face of a natural disaster, so it's easier to believe that someone is pulling the strings, even if that someone is a nefarious cabal of government scientists. Such conspiracy theories are comfort food for a section of society who will do anything to avoid the reality and not talk about climate change. In this digital age, these theories often spread faster than hurricanes themselves. They don't need evidence or logic. Just someone sitting with a mic and creating the perfect storm of paranoia.
Now let's look at Pakistan and the latest turmoil engulfing the nation. Tomorrow is supposed to be a big day. A historic gathering is scheduled to take place in Pakistan's restive northwest. It's a gathering of Pashtuns. Pashtuns are an ethnic group. They're also called Pakhtuns or Pathans. They're spread across South and West Asia, primarily in Pakistan, Afghanistan and India, with smaller pockets in Iran too. The largest concentration of Pashtuns is in Pakistan, in the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is named after them. That's where thousands of Pashtuns are gathering for a national jirga. A jirga is like an assembly of leaders. It has its origins in old tribal conferences. Pakistan's Pashtuns are holding a jirga in the Khyber district to discuss the problems facing the community, specifically state repression. The Pashtuns feel marginalized and ostracized in Pakistan. They feel they are the targets of crackdowns, enforced disappearances and outright violence. That is why they're holding the jirga, to demand justice. How has Islamabad chosen to respond to these allegations? With more violence and bloodshed, take a look.
We were protesting peacefully. They opened fire towards us. They fired tear gas. They killed and wounded our colleagues. We were ready for talks, but they attacked us. God willing, we will continue our protest and will do our rally as per plan, even if they cut off our heads.
That is what happened yesterday. As Pashtun people were on their way to the jirga site, they were attacked by the Pakistani police. The police even went to the jirga grounds, the location that was to host the assembly, and they opened fire. At least 3 people have been killed, dozens are injured. Their crime? They tried to exercise their right to peaceful assembly. Pakistan's government has a different explanation, of course. They recently banned the group organizing the assembly. It's called the Pashtun Tehaffuz Movement, or PTM. Islamabad banned the PTM on Sunday, claiming that the group was acting against, and I'm quoting, the peace and security of the country. The PTM was also accused of promoting, and I'm quoting again, racial discrimination and using abusive language against security institutions. And that last bit is quite interesting. Have you ever seen a group being banned for using abusive language before? It sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? Well, when you dig deeper, it starts making sense. Apparently, this group, the PTM, was quite critical of one security institution in particular, the Pakistani military. Pakistan is a military dictatorship in all but name. Their politicians exist to serve the army, not the people. The army props up and undermines political parties to maintain control behind the scenes. So every political party must toe the military's line or risk getting ousted. Now, what happens when a group of people start openly criticizing the same military? When they actually start talking about military excesses? That's what the Pashtun group has been doing. They've called the Pakistani government military controlled. They say Pakistan's military oppresses the people, that it orders arbitrary arrests and keeps people in jail even after they secure bail. In fact, the group even went further, saying that Pakistan's generals treat war as a business, that they make profits from the blood of innocents. Pakistan certainly has some wealthy generals, and they won't like people questioning their wealth or the source of their wealth. So perhaps they leaned on their puppet government and got the PTM banned. Whatever the cause, Islamabad is now going after the Pashtuns relentlessly. Pakistan's Interior Minister said that PTM supporters will be dealt with, that their passports and identity cards will be cancelled. You saw the violence being meted out to the jirga attendees and the attack on the venue. Islamabad is doing everything it can to stop tomorrow's event from taking place, but the Pashtuns have vowed to go ahead with it. This sets the stage for a bigger clash where scores of peaceful protesters may get hurt or worse. The world should keep a close eye on the situation unfolding in Khyber. It's a big week for the world of academia. The Nobel Prizes are being announced, and they have stirred some controversy for 2 main reasons. First, the hyper-focus on artificial intelligence, with Nobel Prize in AI being awarded in the physics category. And second, Google's triumph on the Nobel stage. The tech giant makes tens of billions of dollars every year, so it has pursued huge research projects. And now Google researchers are winning one Nobel Prize after another. We know it is hard to make groundbreaking discoveries. But when you're competing with big tech, there seems to be no winning, quite literally. The question remains, is this a level playing field? Here is a report.
It's that time of year again. Congratulations are in order. Some of the best minds have been plucked from academic obscurity. They are being awarded the Nobel Prize. So far, in the fields of physiology or medicine, chemistry, physics, and literature. They all have an impressive body of work, obviously. But if we focus on science, most of them are pioneers in artificial intelligence, and they're affiliated with Google. This year, that last bit has stirred a debate. This week, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was awarded to David Baker, Demis Hassabis, and John Jumper for their work in designing proteins, the so-called building blocks of life. These scientists used AI in their research. Baker is a US biochemist, while Hassabis co-founded DeepMind, which is Google's AI research lab. He won the Nobel Prize alongside his Google colleague Jumper. So that's 2 out of 3 for Google, and 3 out of 3 for AI. And remember, this is the second Nobel awarded to researchers with links to AI and Google this year. Which brings us to the Nobel Prize in Physics, which has been the most controversial so far. It has been awarded to John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton, popularly known as the godfather of AI, for their discoveries in machine learning. That paved the way for the AI boom. This Nobel Prize is raising eyebrows. First, because an award in physics has been offered for work in the field of machine learning. Experts say that what the researchers did was phenomenal, but was it physics? The jury is out on that. You see, the Nobel Prize has 6 categories: medicine or physiology, physics, chemistry, literature, peace, and economics. There is no category for math or computer science, so an achievement in AI can't really fit in. And Hinton agrees. He said that if there was a Nobel Prize for computer science, our work would clearly be more appropriate for that, but there isn't one. Now, the second frustrating bit for academics is the Google link. Hinton is a former Google researcher. He made headlines last year when he quit the job at Google to speak more freely about the dangers of AI. That being said, his Nobel-winning work received financial backing from Google. So the question remains, is this a level playing field? Google, the big tech firm which has been at the forefront of AI research, thanks to tens of billions of dollars the company makes every year. With no dearth of money and resources, Google is pursuing giant research projects. And Google is not alone. Most big tech companies do it. They have outpaced traditional academic institutions. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to compete, both in terms of resources and pace. So, is this the future of research? Scientific discovery dominated by profit-driven big corporations? Until we answer this question, innovation and the recognition of it will be limited to pockets, because the grass is greener where you water it.
Now let's talk about India and China. Both sides kicked off a key military dialogue today with their army commanders meeting in Gangtok near the disputed border. Gangtok is the capital of Sikkim, an Indian state in the northeast. In recent weeks, both India and China have been sending positive signals in an effort to resolve the border standoff that escalated 4 years ago. But even as China is making the right noises, India is not letting its guard down. There are enough lessons from history to tell us why this is a sound strategy, to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. So India is beefing up its defenses against China. The government has announced 2 new defense deals. The first is a drone deal with the US, where India is buying 31 new drones, the Predator drones, built by General Atomics. These drones will be bought for all 3 services, the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. 15 drones are for the Indian Navy and 8 each for the Army and the Air Force. The entire deal is worth almost $4 billion. This drone, the Predator, is a lethal weapon. It is what experts call a hunter-killer drone. It can fly quietly, identify and pinpoint targets, and subsequently take them out. The US military has the Predator in its arsenal. It uses it for three purposes: surveillance, intelligence gathering, and airstrikes. India plans to deploy these drones for the exact same roles. And Indian forces, in fact, have operated the Predator before. In 2020, India had leased this drone from the US. This was right after the clashes in Galwan. The Predator was deployed for surveillance activities against China. Earlier, this job was done by troops. India heavily relied on human patrolling, but that is beginning to change. India is now building up a large fleet of drones for surveillance. While human patrols remain an integral part of our defense strategy, drones can reach difficult terrains in areas where humans find it tough to patrol. In the past, India used two Israeli drones for this purpose, the Searcher Mark II and the Heron. And now American drones will join this fleet. So that's the first acquisition, the drones. The second one involves submarines. The government has cleared a proposal to buy 2 new submarines, both nuclear-powered. Experts call these submarines SSN. That's short for Submersible Ship Nuclear, SSN. They're known to be small and agile. There's a small nuclear reactor on board that powers the submarine. Earlier, subs ran on diesel, so they had to resurface frequently for refueling to get more diesel. But nuclear-powered subs can remain underwater for longer durations because they do not need refueling. And these vessels come with significant firepower. They can fire torpedoes and cruise missiles. SSNs are crucial for the Navy. Remember, China has the world's largest Navy, and increasingly it is making its presence felt in the waters around India. China has been sending more vessels in the name of research. It has been sending spy ships to the region. So India needs stronger deterrence on the high seas against the Chinese, and it has been trying to fill the gaps. Just like the Predator, India has leased some SSNs too. It had acquired 2 subs from Russia, but one of them had to be returned because of maintenance issues. So the next best choice is to buy our own, and that is what India is now doing. These decisions send a strong message of intent. India is expediting the modernization of its forces. It is adopting advanced tools of deterrence, like drones and submarines. These deals will also help achieve another important goal, that is building our own defense manufacturing capability. I'll tell you how. Both deals have major Make in India commitments. General Atomics will assemble these drones in India. As for the submarines, they will be manufactured in India, most likely in Visakhapatnam with the help of private players. So overall, India's defense establishment is making progress. It is upgrading its forces and strengthening defense manufacturing. More importantly, it is addressing crucial gaps in building deterrence against China, because that is the only language the dragon understands, the language of strength. There are many reasons why politicians have tiffs, but the last thing you may expect is a TV show. Emily in Paris caused an international diplomatic spat. This is a hugely successful Netflix series. Its popularity has been a boon to French tourism. But now, for the upcoming 5th season, Emily is going to Rome. Netflix has announced the show's departure to Italy, and French President Emmanuel Macron is not having it. He says France is going to fight to keep Emily in Paris. And the Roman mayor has responded. He says this is just not done. While it is very Emily to sow discord wherever she goes, why are the 2 European nations fighting over a TV show? Here's a report.
A 20-something trying to make it in the city of love, hopping about in high heels, thriving at her exciting job, and falling in love with someone new and handsome in every season. Emily may be cut off from reality, but despite her stereotypes, for many she's living the ultimate fantasy in the hugely successful Netflix series Emily in Paris. To give you an idea, 58 million people watched the first season within a month of its release. The show revolves around a US marketing executive who's braving one culture clash after another in France. But the fantasy is not limited to Emily's life. It extends to the country, thanks to the sanitized version of Paris on the show, where the river Seine is suspiciously blue, where there's no sign of poverty, homelessness, or litter. Where cobblestone streets may as well have an Instagram fan account of their own, and where President Emmanuel Macron's wife Brigitte casually bumps into tourists. So when Emily is in Paris, that's where the tourists want to be. In an interview, Macron said, "I think it's good for the image of France. Emily in Paris is super positive in terms of attractiveness for the country." The show has boosted French tourism. This year, 38% tourists cited the series as their reason to visit Paris. The Paris Tourist Office has caught on as well. It suggests 10 key sites where notable scenes from the show were filmed. So it's no surprise that when Emily in Paris announced its departure to Rome for season 5, Macron didn't like it one bit. During an interview, he said, "We will fight hard, and we will ask them to remain in Paris. Emily in Paris in Rome doesn't make sense." Now, that's true. Emily in Paris in Rome doesn't have the same ring to it. But Italy disagrees. The mayor of Rome, Roberto Gualtieri, said in an interview, "You really cannot intimidate or interfere with Netflix production plans for the next season of Emily in Paris. It is just not done." Later, he worded his sentiments better and posted this on X. "Dear Macron, don't worry. Emily is doing very well in Rome. And you can't control her heart, let's let her choose." If someone can cause a diplomatic spat with her travel plans, it's Emily. But realistically, she may not be at the center of this. It's what the show represents, an economic boost. You see, movies and TV shows can create tourism booms. They can help countries gain global attention. On average, a blockbuster movie increases tourism by almost 31%. In 1996, the action film Braveheart led to a 300% increase in visitors to Scotland. Meanwhile, the Harry Potter film franchise increased tourism by at least 50% to every UK location it was shot at. Another example is the Hobbit movie. It was shot in New Zealand. In 2019, 10% of all tourists visited the country thanks to the movie. They added about $440 million to the country's economy. So no wonder Paris and Rome are fighting over Emily. But in this bizarre love triangle for a change, she seems to have made up her mind.
It was hard finding something funny today, so we turned to our source of unlimited humor, the Pakistan cricket team. They're playing a test match against England right now. It's a home game in Multan. Pakistan batted first and made 556 runs. Impressive, right? But don't forget the age-old saying in cricket, the other side has a bat too. And looks like England came with massive bats. Because guess how much they made? 823 runs. It was embarrassing and humiliating for Pakistan. In other words, a normal Wednesday. Of course, fans are not happy about this thrashing. They're mocking the Pakistan players on social media. Some Indian users have also joined in. I guess it's one thing that both countries agree on: how bad the Pakistan cricket team is.
क्या हो गया तुम्हें? क्यों नहीं बोल रहे हो? कुछ तो बोलो.
माफ करना, गुस्से में इधर उधर निकलता है। ओ भाई, मारो मुझे, मारो मारो।
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken was seen twinning with the Malaysian Prime Minister in matching Mao suits. In the US, a woman calls 911 after dozens of hungry raccoons surround her home. And the FBI returns Nazi-looted Monet paintings to the heirs of the original Jewish owners after 84 years. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1970, the island nation of Fiji gained independence. Fiji attracted European settlers who wanted to establish plantations. In 1874, it became a British colony. Fiji's independence came due to international pressure 96 years later. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Look the other way. Why am I meeting secretary with a mouse suit? we must know the same tailor. We arrived this afternoon.
Firstpost decodes the U.S. election, explains how America chooses its president. Your primer on the race to the White House. Everything you need to know about how America votes and its global implications. U.S. Election Explained, every Monday and Thursday only on Firstpost.